Hello and welcome to Command Stack. I'm Ken, and today we have an excerpt from the other night. After editing the generic upgrade errata episode, I decided to pull the conversation Garrett and I had with Dennis when we started talking about all the rule changes. There's roughly 20 minutes of content here with additional insight from Dennis on either why things changed, how previous rulings on the forums that Derek had made were rolled into the update, and of course Dennis will point out where the different clarifications are. So we here at Command Stack hope you enjoy the conversation, so let's get right into it.
Also, if y'all would like to, we can talk about the rules reference guide changes, if that tickles your fancy. But if not, that's also fine.
Yeah, no, there's a couple important ones, especially the squadron
Yes, yeah. I guess
line of
we should actually.
sight.
That one's actually is genuinely really important. So, but before we do, one thing I will say: if it was on the rules form from Derek, it was folded into the rules reference guide. Um, so all of the changes, most of the changes are actually technically old because they were done on the rules form. We just officially have like put them in a document and given them blue text and all that. But there are a couple new ones, and the squadron one was a new one, and that's the big one, I think. So if we want
Uh,
to talk about that.
yeah, let's talk. Yeah, do it. Go
Sure.
forward.
So it's actually pretty simple. Instead of measuring from the closest point, you measure from the center of the squadron space. This is solely a time saving measure. There's not really any balance consideration for this. It probably will have some impact on some things. But it was mostly a this is taking too long because you have to triangulate the closest point to the whole zone and then measure from that point, and it was silly. I understand why the devs did this. It was part of I think that they kind of had this idea that if you measure over something, you still measure under it too, because there was a line in the line of sight, I think it was line of sight, that was actually removed in this update, and no one noticed it because it was kind of hard to, note it down. That the shield dials didn't count for measuring obstruction or something, and that was undone like years ago by Derek on the rules forum. But that was still like the original version of the game was that if you measured over the shield dial, you kind of ignored it and then still pretended to measure under it. And that was just stupid because it was, you had to lift the ship up and all this nonsense. And so I think the reason that the original devs did not want to measure from the center of the squadron is because they had this idea that if you measure over, um, like the way that line of sight works in their version, I guess, was that even if the squadron is over the obstacle, if the line is drawn over the squadron and then the obstacle is still under that line, even if it technically isn't because the squadron base is situated in such a way that it's not, it's like peeking over it, you're still considered to have measured over the obstacle. However, that's not how anyone has played it. That's not how future interpretations have done it. I don't think it's ever been explicitly said that that's not how it works, but I will say that I don't think that's how it is supposed to work because checking that is a pain. And the problem is that their solution to that was something that just added 20, 30 minutes to the game because measuring, well, sorry, let me back up. It actually didn't because no one played it that way, which is all the kind of the other issue, is that no one measured from the closest point. Everyone just measured from the center anyway.
Right.
And so, especially because for squadrons versus squadrons, it hasn't changed because the center and the closest point are mathematically identical. It was only against ships where it mattered. But yeah, that's my line of sight rant over. Line of sight is really silly, and
So,
hopefully this
so
has made it a little easier.
interestingly enough, and Dennis, you hit the key point there. Squadron to squadron doesn't change because you're right. The
Yes.
trigonometry specifically, or
Yeah.
not trig, but the geometry rather,
Geometry, yeah. I mean,
specifically.
it's a circle. You can throw a trick in there.
Right, but end of the day, you're firing post to post.
Yeah.
Then the only time it really comes up when you're attacking a ship is
Or being attacked from a ship.
right, is specific when there's an asteroid obstruction and
Yes.
you can kind of scoot your
Yeah.
squadron in such a way where the closest point is beyond the point that post to dot or vice versa would be obstructed, yet closest point to the ship hull zone where you would measure line of sight is clear. And I think in all the games I've ever played, that's happened twice. So it's something that does not happen very often. And now you've just eliminated that. And I think that's a good thing.
Yeah. And it's and even beyond that too, it's also just like it just simplifies. It's like why are we giving players the ability to do that for an increase in complexity in all other cases?
Yeah,
It just
because
doesn't make
there's
sense.
for like I said, I've played hundreds of games. For 2 times, we're talking less than a percentage point of games that I've played that rule actually mattered.
Yeah, exactly.
That's me personally. There might be someone that it happens all the time to, but I would guess on the whole, this is a great quality of life change that is going to have very little impact on the vast majority of shots.
Exactly. I guess other things.
Well, there's I got a list here.
Okay.
The proximity mine token language was cleaned up some.
Yes.
Uh,
That one was kind of annoying to me because it was apparently it was clear that like all of the tokens are removed, but even if the first token kills them, you just don't roll for the second ones. It didn't really make sense. So we just changed it to where you roll it all at once. Mathematically, that's the same, and then they're all removed. So it's very clear that typo in that paragraph notwithstanding, it's clear that they're all removed, and then you roll for all of them.
yes. And then raid tokens. This question comes up a lot with newer players. But a ship, this was added. A ship cannot discard a dial it gained from an effect to discard its raid tokens. Like a Thrawn dial can't be used to do it.
Yeah. So that was a Derek ruling, I believe, that was folded in. I don't think that was one of my rulings. I agree with it, for the record, but and the reason for that is technically this line is actually not in addition to the rules. This is actually just a clarification because the time step in which you gain dials is not the same, I believe. It's been a while since I've looked at that text, but I'm fairly certain like the timing doesn't line up to where it doesn't actually work. Even if this text was not here, it just makes it explicit.
Right.
And then I should also mention the other part of it, raid tokens can only be assigned to ships with a size class. That is specifically for stations, and that's it. I don't know why stations can't have raid tokens, but they can. So
Oh yeah, because TF would like that.
yeah, I guess TF would matter a little bit.
Let's see here. So Exegors, they removed the chaining of Exegors where you could put an Exegorth down and put an Exegorth on an Exegorth. I've tried to do this in a few tournaments, and the judge always tells me no.
Well, okay, but again, this was one of the ones that was already a thing on the forum that we just folded in. But yeah, it was really silly. Yeah, that was it. Yeah, that was you can't do that. I'm sorry.
The cleaning up of replacing, exchanging, setting, and removing die.
Yep. Yeah, that one was the devs are a little silly and they use 3 different words that mean the same thing. Whatever. They were not defined, so we defined them because you need to define things, as it turns out. So I will also note replace / exchange have the same text because they're the same word, except they just do different things, and it's totally normal and fine, and I have no thoughts about it at all.
Okay. Yeah. So just so everyone's clear, you can look at the rules reference guide. It just defines what it means to replace, set, or remove.
Yes.
Moving on, we already talked about the line of sight. On the huge ship, there was a clarification under the attack. A huge ship can perform up to 3 attacks during its activation instead of up to 2. And then it was added, each of these attacks must be declared from a different hull zone. And that was to fix the rules that came with the SSD expansion itself.
Yes. I'll admit, this was the Derek clarification. I don't remember. He explained it to me once, and I honestly forgot what the justification was. It made sense. I should note it does not overrule gunnery teams. People were saying it does. It does not. Gunnery teams does override this. It's just a clarification for some other issue that I'm unable to remember at the moment.
Yes, not a big deal.
Not a big deal, yeah.
But next, okay, so this is for cards, card effects. So card effects, this is added. Card effects are mandatory unless those effects are specified as optional or limited to a set number of uses within a specified timing. And then upgrade cards that utilize critical effects are always optional, as specified in attack and effects use and timing topics.
Yes.
Do you have anything to add to this? I mean, this is just
not really. It's just true. Like it's just a fact, you know.
I think this is how we're generally playing, anyways.
Yeah. A lot of this through the rules reference guide is that.
Right. Like an example, in case somebody's confused, you may counter. You don't have to counter. If somebody shoots you, you don't have to counter back. It's an option.
Yeah, because it says
And
in the
that's
text. It does say in the text, right? I'm not crazy. It's may.
I think under counter when it's like spelled out all the way, potentially. But yeah, so that's just an example
That
of
might
that.
actually have been a bad example. No, it does say
Oh,
may. It does say may.
okay,
It does
yeah.
say may. Yeah, you may attack that squadron with an anti-squadron.
So that's a good one. Okay.
I'll admit,
Here's
I can't actually think off the top of my head of a mandatory effect other than the DTT forcing removing the dice after you roll the new one. That might actually just be what this is for. But usually the
maybe.
question that comes up with DTT is a timing issue and not a is it mandatory to do it or not. But I don't know. It's true nonetheless, and it's in the rules reference guide, so it's super true. So
All right. This is under defense tokens under the redirect.
yes.
So it's a timing thing. After damage is totaled during the resolve damage step, the defender may suffer any amount of damage on the chosen zone shields, et cetera, et cetera. This is just cleaning up redirect. Why did you guys have to do this?
So the change was it originally said, I can't remember the exact wording, but it was something like the timing was when you suffer damage, the defender may suffer any amount of damage, blah blah blah. So we changed it to this specifically for the interaction between Blue Beam and XI7s. With the old text, the Blue Beam crit would trigger redirect and then it wouldn't work like at all. The token did not do anything because of XI7s and Blue Beam. Derek explained it to me. It made sense. It was a while ago. I don't remember it entirely. And so changing to this made it explicit because the damage that Blue Beam inflicts is actually before the resolve damage step. And so it was, or is it after? I think it was whatever. It doesn't matter. The point is, it was to fix that. There was also a side like secondary fire or whatever you want to call it. Adi Gala, I think was who it was. Yeah. In the old text, you could technically choose to do Adi Gala in an order that would make her not function. Now
Okay.
you are forced to do it in an order where it will work. But it was mainly, like I said, it was mainly for the XI7 Blue Beam interaction that will go on the rules form at some point, by the way, if it hasn't already. So that was the justification for that. That was the problem that we were fixing with this change, was that interaction.
Okay.
So that
Love
combo is still good, by the way. It still works. It just doesn't invalidate the token entirely and make you explode with 9 damage with nothing you can do about it. So that is I remember what it was. It was it forced you to suffer all of the damage from Blue Beam except one in one zone. Because the redirect happened when you suffered damage, and then that triggered XI7s, and then Blue Beam then came in and dealt all the damage to it. So you would deal one to the side or whatever. A redirect would now trigger and be resolved, and then XI7s would say, hey, you're in redirect. You can't deal any extra damage to any zone. And so now basically even if you have XI7s, the Blue Beam damage can be distributed to any whole zone.
Got it. Like with advanced projectors.
Exactly. Yeah. Or even no. Because the Blue Beam damage is not it's you suffer 1 damage. And so here, let me read the card. Why is it red? Whatever. Ignition red. The crit. The defender suffers 1 damage. This occurs once for each red or blue crit icon in the pool. So if there's 5 crits, you're going to suffer 5 damage. But it's the suffer damage text that's like Boba, where you pick the ship and he suffers 1 damage. When a ship suffers that damage, it picks a whole zone and then takes the damage in that whole zone. But so it's not advanced project. You don't need advanced projectors.
Oh, I see. Because you could say you're going to redirect to the whole zone that no longer has shields. Right?
No. So
that's what it was, the problem.
No. Well, kind of. So sorry if this is complicated, by the way, or it's confused.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, we're probably confusing people more than we should, but
maybe a little bit. But I'll try to explain it. So super composite beam turbo lasers, you would get one, let's say, 5 damage or whatever. That 5 damage, you would suffer 1 damage. Oh, sorry, let's back up. My apologies. You roll the damage. You calculate the damage. You choose which crit you're going to resolve. The defender then spends defense tokens. They might actually do that before the crit. Whatever, it doesn't matter. the defense tokens are spent before damage is dealt.
Right.
So the redirect is spent before anything else happens. So you spend the redirect, then the damage is calculated, and then at that time, or before that maybe, it's been a while since I've looked at any of the steps, but whatever. It's definitely after you spend the token, but before the redirect effect is actually resolved, the total damage that blue beam is going to inflict is counted. So then, as the defender, you pick any hull zone, you suffer a damage. The old redirect text said, when damage is suffered, resolve the redirect effect, right? XI7 comes in and says, hey, you're resolving the redirect defense effect. You can't suffer any damage in any hull zone except the defending hull zone because you suffered damage from super composite beam turbo lasers. So then all of the remaining damage must be suffered in the defending hull zone, including all of the super heavy composite beam damage and also all of the normal damage. And so you would get, the normal damage of say 5 and then 5 extra from composite beam. You can suffer 1 composite beam damage in another hull zone. So that's 9 damage in your front hull zone that you can't redirect.
Okay.
I don't know if that made any sense.
No, it makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. It was a very niche, complicated interaction, and I don't think it ever came up. And most people played it like that's not how it worked anyway. But now it explicitly does not work that way.
Understood. Okay. We got that. Moving on.
That was like 30 minutes of explanation. I'm sorry.
This is the last big one. This is a clarification for spending accuracies. So I'm going to read this whole thing so it makes sense. The attacker can spend 1 or more of its accuracy icons to choose the same number of defender's defense tokens. The chosen tokens cannot be spent during this attack. And then we added in blue text, accuracy icons can be spent at any time during the resolve attack effects step unless otherwise specified.
Yes. This was just for vet gunners.
This is okay. I was going to say a lot of new players do this where they don't know they can spend the tokens before they
before they do other attack effects,
all their stuff.
It was admittedly written kind of confusingly, so we just clarified it to ensure that it was clear that you can spend accuracies, you can then do other effects, and then you can spend more accuracies and all that stuff, which is just vet gunners, to be honest. At least when that ever comes up. So that was it.
Love it.
Not as complicated as an explanation of the last one for sure.
Okay. Awesome. So that's the last rules reference change I have.
You are missing one.
Is it?
It's tags.
Are you talking about the tags?
Yeah, tags now are a thing that
I was ignoring that, but yeah.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. So they added a tag section to talk about the bombard and droid and all that stuff. Right?
So
that's what that is, right?
Yeah, so this was technically speaking, everyone knew what they did before when it said droid only and all that stuff. They technically didn't do anything in the rules reference guide. They weren't referenced anywhere. They didn't, say anything. And so we just added this text to, say like, hey, this is what these things do that exist, even though it was pretty clear to everybody. So that's pretty much all it is. So
well, yeah. Perfect. Fantastic. Again, I say the biggest thing, everybody, just measure line of sight from your center of the squadrons. Easy peasy. It's a great way to think about it.
Otherwise, just play the game as you've always been, because these clarifications are usually just, we're making it so that you played it how you did anyway.
Yeah. Other than that, excited for a new era of Armada. I think it'll take everybody a good year to really settle in to what we got here. So I'm excited. I'm excited. That's all I got to say. Thanks again, Dennis, for
of course.
trudging through that with us.
All right, so this is where we jumped into a different part of the previous episode. Rather than replay portions of what we said before, I'm simply just going to end it here. So stay tuned to Command Stack as we take a look at all the changes holistically and start to unravel how these changes may impact your fleets. Special thanks again to Dennis for spending a few hours with us covering the errata and a portion of the updates. We definitely appreciate your insights. And on behalf of the entire Command staff, John, Ryan, and Garrett, I'm Ken, saying thank you for listening to Command Stack.